This is Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Nadal, professional psychic medium.
Today's guest is Matt Starr. He is a musician, producer, career coach, and speaker. Matt has toured and recorded with Ace Frehley from Kiss, Mr. Big, Lynn Turner from Rainbow, Kevin Dubrow, Quiet Riot, George Lynch, Dokken, Michael DeBarris, members of Guns N' Roses, Kiss, Bon Jovi, and Whitesnake. In the studio, he has worked with several producers, Jimmy Bralower, Toby, Wright, Mike Chapman, Dave Bianco. And in his work as a career coach and speaker, Matt has spoken to audiences around the world, both in academic and corporate setting, as well as working with musicians one-on-one to help transform their lives and careers. As an educator, Matt has worked with Warren Huart to produce content on getting sounds in the studio, session drumming, tuning, and other topics. Matt's column, The Big Idea with Matt Starr, in Drumhead Magazine focuses on mindset, networking, and finances. It's a pleasure to have you on, Matt.
Hey, Kathy, good to see you.
Hey, thank you so much. I know it's, I actually stumbled over you recently. I saw a lot of your stuff on social media, and I was pretty blown away by your message. And that's really what caught my attention. And I'm prior military. I spent a long time in the military. And towards the end of my career, the last 10 years, I was a senior instructor. So the message that you put out is really very much, I was telling a couple of my friends recently, your message is very much the way we teach in the military. You know, you have a structure to the way you teach, and you have a structure to the way you talk, and you get to what we call the bluff. I don't know if you've ever heard of the bluff, but it's the bottom line up front. So you can talk for 20 minutes, you can talk for 2 hours, but what's the message someone's leaving with? And that's the bottom line up front. And I think you get to that in a really short period of time. So your messages on social media, they're quick, but they're really captivating because you get to that bluff. And that's really what brought me into you. So I have to give you that credit because you really got my attention just with that. I know you have a lot of experience in music, and you have, you know, your bio is really very impressive, but it was that piece of your teaching that's what pulled me in. So I wanted to say welcome to the interview.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for your service. I think I credit probably Instagram, you know, with making me get to the point, because I can certainly talk and talk and talk, but it's 30-second clips, 60-second clips at the most. So you really gotta, you're competing with cats falling off of sofas and people, you know, jumping their bikes and wiping out, and, you know, girls in bikinis. You know what I mean? There's just so much stuff on social media. So it's like someone's swiping, I kind of got to get their attention pretty quick.
Well, you got my attention, so that's great. So how did you start your music career? You know, were you a very young kid starting into music? How did that all work out for you?
Yeah, I was about 8 years old, and I discovered Kiss. I had a neighbor who had a Kiss album, and you know, I liked music, but I don't really remember like being into anything in particular. But the album's called Kiss Alive 2, and you just open it up, and they're on stage with smoke and flames, and they're looking like they're having a good time. And I just thought, like, I don't even know what this is. I know this is a band, obviously, but like, I like the sound of the music, and whatever's going on in this picture, I just want to be in that picture with those guys. And it wasn't even like I want to go see those guys. It's like I want to be those guys. I want to be in there. And I didn't know, you know, that they were famous or they made money or girls. I didn't even care about girls yet, you know, any of that stuff. It was just, I was just so attracted to that image. And that never changed. You know, that's still, when I see a cool picture of Kiss I haven't seen before, I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. I love these guys.
That's so great, though. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm probably a little older than you, but I remember hearing Kiss on the radio, and I have a very vivid memory of driving down. My dad was driving to his mom's house in New Jersey, and Beth was on the radio. Until this day, I literally can see the radio. I could see the dials on the radio. I could hear Beth playing. I could see the cars passing. And that was the first time I actually felt like, wow, like this band really came alive for me. And then one of the kids in my, fourth grade class played drums we had like a little recital, and he played like Detroit Rock City or whatever, and everyone was like, oh my God, and he didn't win. But it was the first time I saw Kiss play live. So a lot of times when people say, when was the first time you saw Kiss play live? I go, the fourth grade. And they're like, really? I'm like, no, I saw my friend Ricky do it in the fourth grade.
Right.
Yeah, so that's pretty neat. Did you come from a musical family?
Not really. My dad sang in church, and we had a piano in our house for the first maybe 10 years of my life, but no, there wasn't any like musicians in the family. But yeah, again, I just wanted to be part of that thing that I saw with that album cover. And so then I started taking drum lessons. I did see Kiss in the fourth grade in 1979, and my parents took me and the whole neighborhood to see Kiss. And my parents were cool. Like, I remember there was a thing on 2020, which was like a 60 minutes kind of news show Thursday nights at 10. My mom told me, she's like reading the paper. She goes, Kiss is going to be on 2020. And I knew that was like a late night show. And I just looked at her. She goes, you can stay up. I was like, all right. So yeah, my parents were super cool. And Judas Priest opened up. And that was my first introduction to a live concert. So like everything else was measured against that. So my cousin took me to see the Moody Blues about 3 months later. And I was expecting like the stage to blow up or something, and nothing happened. They just played music. And I was like, what is this? This is not like Kiss. So yeah, they really like set the standard.
That's an amazing memory, though, especially that being your first concert. First of all, I mean, I just saw Judas Priest, and he's like God. So you really had a initiation to rock and roll world, heavy metal world, all in one night for a fourth grader. So you're very lucky. So what was it like playing drums, though? I mean, did you just feel gravitated to it, or did you try out a couple of other instruments first?
I wanted to play guitar. And my parents, I told them what I ripped the page out of the J.C. Penney catalog, which for younger people, that's like analog Amazon, basically, right? It was like a phone book with everything from like car tires to sofas to guitars and everything else. So I ripped the page out. I'm like, I want this guitar, and I was so sure I was going to get it. And I came downstairs. They bought me a Kiss record, Kiss Alive. I had a little briefcase turntable. And then I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I'm going to get the guitar. And then they go, and we have something else. And I was like, all right, here it comes. And they bring out a bike. And I'm thinking, I'm going to get a bike and a turntable and a guitar. And then after, all the presents, it was like, okay, so what do you want for breakfast? And I'm like, wait, what happened to the guitar? And they're like, oh, we thought you might be disappointed if you knew what you were getting. So anyway, I moped around the house for like a week. And then my mom said, you could play drums in the school band. So I did that probably for about a month, but I wanted to play rock and roll. And so like I was standing in the back of the band class, and we get to play drums maybe 5 minutes. And then the rest of the time we'd be working with the flutes or whatever else. So I quit school band. And then I just started teaching myself how to play from listening to records. And that was like the beginning. So I was like listening to Cheap Trick, Aerosmith, Kiss, AC/DC. That was kind of the core. And those guys are, the drummers are some of my favorite drummers to this day from all those bands. So like that was the stuff I came up on, like late 70s rock and roll.
So you had mentioned that you were from Springfield, Massachusetts. I'm very familiar with it. I had served in that area in the military. So what was that area like growing up in regards to kind of like the rock and roll scene? Like, were you kind of connected to like Boston bands, or what was kind of like the draw?
Yeah, so I grew up in Connecticut in Rocky Hill, but the Kiss concert was in Springfield. In Connecticut there was, I mean, I think Michael Bolton perhaps was from Connecticut. The Picaros, which those they went out to play in Toto, and their dad was from there. But there really wasn't much of anything. I'm sure there was a bar scene back in the day with like cover bands and stuff, but it kind of caught like the tail end of like some of the regional bands that we used to go see. There's a band called Joint Forces, which had a guitar player, Jimmy Bell. Jimmy plays with House of Lords now, and Autograph. And but but like Jimmy was a god to us, because he was older than us and he had a car and he had like really long hair and he could play the guitar like amazingly. So I ended up playing, in a band called Run 21, which was a band that we used to go see. So that was cool to have this band that we used to go see on a big stage, and now I'm playing in the band. So that was like a real validating experience, being 18 and doing that. And I was playing in bars, before I was old enough to go to bars.
That's really great. So, do you feel like the school band kind of connection ever worked out for you, or you just kind of did it on your own?
No, that didn't work for me at all. But I would say like that was something that I brought with me when I started teaching lessons because I understood like, okay, at the time I was like, say 22, 23, and I'm talking to like a 10-year-old. Okay, they don't care, I'm in a Cheap Trick or Kiss. I got in the Motley Crue because Tommy Lee was such an amazing drummer. It's like they were bringing me Nirvana. They're like, I don't care about your stuff, old man. So I had to like connect what they were into and go, okay, well, I'll show you this thing, but then I want to tell you, like, this guy probably got it from this guy in the 70s, and this guy in the 70s got it from this guy in the 60s, and draw that lineage, to make it interesting, which is something also that I have with my coaching. It's like I really want the person I'm talking to understand, and that sometimes means I have to speak in their language in a way that they understand. But no, the school band thing, no, I didn't really feel a connection to that, and I didn't learn much. 'Cause I wasn't paying attention. I just wanted to play like Kiss songs.
You're hilarious. I know you were just being a kid, right? You mentioned Jimmy Bell. I actually just saw him last weekend. He was hanging out with us. We were at the Aldo Novo concert, and Ace Frehley and all that. So we were all there together. He's a great guy. His talent is super amazing as well. Yeah. So you've been in a lot of good company, huh? So what was your first gig? What was the first thing that you really feel like you're stepping into? Like a new life for yourself or finding a new career? What was that first break that you think you got?
Well, I started out playing drums, like I said, but then, like in my early 20s, I started writing and playing guitar and singing, and so there was about 10 to 15 years where I was mostly doing that. So I had a band called The Flames, and we opened for Motley Crue, we opened for Lenny Kravitz, Smithereens, Joan Jett, etc. Had a song on the radio, had a demo deal with Atlantic, but like it never, it was like almost, and each thing seemed like a new level. But then once it was all done, I looked back and I was like, we were just everything was an almost. Like we opened for Lenny Kravitz, but then when the show was over, that was it, and I went back to my house, and I couldn't bring that with me, other than the accomplishment, which was cool, but it didn't change my life, you know. So that didn't really happen until I moved to LA for the second time, and the first gig was playing with a band called Bang Tango, which was that was a band that I liked from the 80s. They were a little different. They were kind of like the Cult, kind of had like a little vampire-y LA vibe. And so I played with them. And then that turned into Beautiful Creatures, which was the same singer, Joe Leste. And so, but they were a newer band, right? So they'd gotten a record deal in whatever, 99, 2000 or something. So we recorded the second record, which was called Deuce. And Alex Grassi was a guitar player. And so I moved to LA with Alex pretty much. We moved like a month apart from each other. So Alex brought me into that, which led to Beautiful Creatures. And then Alex, I don't know how, but somehow started playing with, I don't remember if it was Kevin Dubrow or Quiet Riot, which thing was first, but Kevin did a solo record and Alex got asked to put the band together. So he brought me in on drums, and that was a great experience. Kevin was awesome, super funny. Uh, I was a big fan of Free and Humble Pie at that point, and Kevin was like a super huge fan. So we would talk about that stuff all the time. And that was kind of like, okay, I'm playing, and even Bang Tango, like I'm playing with the people that wrote the song, and I'm playing with guys that I used to play along to their records, and now I'm actually playing with them. So that to me was like, okay, this is now like a next level thing.
That makes sense. It's probably pretty surreal though, right? When you sit back and realize it sounds like you went like a long way, but in a short period of time. Would you agree? Because it sounds like it's a short period of time, all of that happening.
It was a long period of time before it started happening, but then once it started, it happened fast. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So what's your favorite memory from that time? I mean, you're talking about humble pie. I mean, I'm a huge fan of that. I mean, you're really picking out some real, you're really lucky to be connected with a lot of those people early on in your career. So they probably gave you a lot of different experiences, or would you think what would you come from that? What's like your favorite memory of working from some of those classic people?
I think just being in the room with them and one having them, like with Kevin, we played and after a song or two, he just said, "Wow, you sound great." To like get one of those guys again whose records I grew up listening to, you play their song and they turn around, they say, "You sound great." Just that acknowledgement, and not really like not getting fired, not having them go, "Oh, I thought you said this guy was good," you know?
Yeah, that's funny. That's like the validation, though. There's something about that that you just feel like you've been validated, that, you're in the right spot and they made the right phone call to have you there. So that's cool. So where did you go
Completely.
from there?
So with that, then I went back to singing, and every time I saw Kevin, he'd be like, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm singing for the you should play drums." I go, "Well, yeah, but I got this out." I go, You're a drummer. You need to play drums." Like, and he would always, he'd be like, "Oh, that's great. You're singing. You should be playing drums." Like he just was always saying. So we had a band called the Automatic Music Explosion, and that was another band that I was fronting. And we did a record with Mike Chapman. Mike had produced and written some of my favorite songs and records like Ballroom Blitz, and there was a bunch of other things that he was involved with, like the Knack, My Sharona, and did a couple Blondie records, Parallel Lines with Heart of Glass. So there was all this stuff that I really loved, and this guy had been part of all of those things. So we knew he was the right producer, and again, did a record. It was great, didn't go anywhere. And so at that point, I was like, you know what, dude, you write good songs, you're a good singer, da da da. You've accomplished some things, but like, just play drums. Like, let me just join somebody who already made it, And that was like, at the time, it wasn't a hard decision to make, but I think it took me a while, to be able to get to that point. And I said, you know what? Yeah, I'm like in my late 30s. I don't want to keep on trying to make it. Like, I don't have to be the one that makes it. I can just, you know, join somebody who already has made it. And then that's when I started playing drums again. And then the Ace Frehley gig came out of that, which turned into Mr. Big, George Lynch, Lynn Turner, Bill X, just love hate, like boom, boom, boom. It just kind of kept rolling from there. And that let me know too, like, wow, I mean, I'm working hard, but like this is happening so easily, and quickly. And that's where my coaching got born because I had guys in LA coming to me going, "Hey man, listen, no offense, but I'd never heard of you a year ago. And now you're touring the world with all these name artists. What are you doing? How are you doing this?" And I thought about it, like, can I explain what I'm actually doing? And that was the beginning of the coaching thing. That's how that got started.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because, first of all, I want to say that I think early on in your life, when you looked at the Kiss picture, it's like you manifested it. You looked past the picture and you saw the way you wanted your life to be. And I think there's a lot of positivity in that, especially when children can see that. They manifest their life either on a subconscious or a conscious level, and they know that they want something different for themselves. But when you got involved in doing that, and when you said, how am I going to explain what I'm doing? Did you realize that you had kind of caught on so fast, or when people were coming up to you, was that more of like, that you realized that you should be doing that? Because sometimes people become successful and they don't realize how successful they are. So were you pretty aware of it, or was it more of a shock when people were starting to tell you, look at all these things that are happening to you?
I think it's a little of both. I mean, when I'm playing in New York City with Ace Frehley playing, just songs, I was like, okay, this is super cool, And then again, like something else came out of that, and then something else, and now I'm touring the world with Mr. Big and blah blah. Like I was aware that okay, this is a whole other level, and these things just keep happening. But I always thought, and I've gotten past it, but I always thought like, oh, this is going to be the last one though. Like, what's the next gig? Because I'm a hired gun. I'm not a member of any of these bands, right? So like they can fire me at any time, or they can choose to retire, or just do something different, And so like, am I going to get the next one? Like, what's the next one going to be? So I went through that for a while. So I think there's kind of a thing of like, yeah, this is cool, but I got to keep working hard. So I was aware of it for sure, and I definitely have had that experience where people have asked, and when they started asking me, like, "Hey, can you explain what you're doing? Because I want to be doing what you're doing." And a lot of these people were people that I asked for advice when I got back into drumming because they were further along than me, and then I just kind of blew past them as far as the resume and the accomplishments. So yeah, but friends have been good. I mean, I had someone say to me a few years ago, they're like, "Do you realize you're like one of the only, like a handful of people that have played with all the original Kiss guys?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I mean, okay." you know, they're like, and I only played with Gene at an event with Johnny Depp, but they're like, "Yeah, but there's only like a handful of people, barring, someone like Eric Singer or Eric Carr, the second drummer they had, or Bruce Kulick, that have actually played with all the original guys." And I was like, "Oh, okay. That's pretty cool." So I know it's true, but then at the same time, like, "Oh, that's cool," but I'm not gonna go like make a T-shirt or put it in my bio or.
That's actually very cool. So I agree. Sometimes we think back and it's like, please pinch me. Like, did that really happen? So I think
Hmm.
one thing about it that I really want to get to is when these front of the colleagues came to you and said, what are you doing? Did you consciously quickly come up with what you were doing, or was it more started out your coaching in a conversation? Was it more coming out of, conversation you're teaching, or automatically you saw, well, number one, you have to do this, number two, you have to do this? Like, what was your style early on? Because a lot of times when you start something, you may not have the process. You kind of have to develop the process. So, was your coaching early on more conversational with people?
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple things I could say, but I would say, "Well, tell me what you're doing," and then I had to back them and go, "What do you want to do? Let's start with that." Because they can tell you what they're doing and then just go on and on about how frustrated they were with their current situation. I'm like, what do you want to do? And a lot of times people couldn't answer that. They just knew they didn't want to do what they were doing. And I'm like, what? And this is probably where the military thing comes in. It's like, what's the objective? And it's like, then you make every decision based on whether or not it's in alignment with that objective. Is it going to get you further along or not? And once you have that focus, it makes decisions really easy. So it was more conversational, and I certainly have my things now after doing this for over a decade. I have I've broken it down really clear, but, yeah, it's always a conversation, because that person has to be part of that process. It's not like just a kind of a one size fits all thing. There's a certain amount of with my one-on-one stuff, there's a certain amount of intuition that goes into that, or just getting to know the person and going, "Yeah, that's cool. Why don't you go to the beach today, actually?" Like, "What?" I'm like, "Just stop doing stuff today. Do stuff tomorrow." So there's like a balance to that.
It's so interesting. I find you fascinating because I can see your mind working as you're talking. But I've had to make, a lot of hard conversations very often in the military where you have to sit down and do a counseling with someone, or you have to sit down and kind of coach someone through something. A lot of times it's career choices. Sometimes they've, decided that they're not sure they want to stay in something. And those are always like the hard conversations. They've dedicated their life, they learned all these skills, and they're at the breaking point that I call it. Like, do I stay in? They have one foot in, one foot out. I'm sure you've worked with musicians that feel they're at a breaking point. They have one foot in, one foot out. They put in years of hard work. Maybe they've done some accomplishments, but they didn't find the happiness that they thought they would have found. And you mentioned a good point, looking at the age, looking at what age and stage you are in your life. So what have been some really kind of hard conversations? Because sometimes we can see where they need to go. We just can't tell them where they need to go. They have to find it on their own. So what's one of your kind of early on kind of discoveries with working with that?
Well, I see. I'm different than a therapist. I will tell you what you need to do, right? And I'm not in charge of anything, but it's like if someone's talking and they're kind of talking in circles or something, I go, it sounds like you're saying this, but I really think it's this. Does that resonate with you? And like I just try and reflect back to them what I'm hearing. And a lot of times that shows up like, well, what do you want to do? And they're like, well, I just want to, if I could just make a little money. I'm like, a little money? I mean, would you be happy with a little? Like, you're ordering at the restaurant here. So do you want like something on a piece of bread, or do you want a hamburger or a cheese? You can ask for what you want. So a lot of it is just kind of needling them and pushing them to like, is this your truth? And a lot of times that's like pushing them kind of further to like really claim what they want. Because when they're a kid, they want everything. And they get older and they get quote unquote realistic. And the realistic, I say, if you want to be realistic, if you don't follow your dreams, you're going to be miserable. That's realistic, right? And if you want to guarantee, the only guarantee is if you don't follow your heart, you're going to regret it. So like, there's your guarantee, and there's the being realistic part. So like, with that, what do you want to do? So I don't find it like a hard conversation, because ultimately I'm trying to help the person and be an advocate. And I've had people that have come to me wanting to do music, and as we get more into it, they're like, actually, I'd rather focus on my company that I started and have music on the side. I go, okay, is that your truth? And if it is, then let's do it. Awesome. So I'm not trying to like get more musicians in the world, right? I'm just trying to help people to realize what their purpose is.
Yes. Well, you really have a lot of good topics that you cover. Like one topic you covered recently was overthinking. And I have to tell you that hit home for me. I mean, that has hit home for me probably my whole life, because I always think I'm so busy and I'm doing everything. But then I go back and think, well, did I do enough of that? Because I'm doing so many things. So it's hard to turn that overthinking off. So, especially, in your coaching, can you talk a little bit about overthinking? Because I think a lot of the population goes through that in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always tell people, I don't, why do you think I know so much about this stuff? It's like I go through it, right? So it's not like I'm just gliding through life on a cloud. It's like I walk through this stuff. And if I haven't gone through it, I've had enough clients that have. But yeah, overthinking, real common thing. I mean, look, it's safe inside our heads, right? We're answering our own questions. We're creating our own reality. We're not actually interacting with the outside world. So we can't get hurt, right? So it's really easy to get stuck up there. And, I try and simplify things, like you said, the bluff. Like it's like, what's the bottom line here? And overthinking is like the head title, but underneath that is the procrastination, or feeling like you don't have enough self-esteem, or feeling like, you're second guessing everything, or, just like a general fear about the future. I go, okay, all of that, it's just overthinking. Like, wait, so when you were doing all that, did you take any action? No. Were you talking to someone? No. Were you by yourself? Yep. Overthinking. Oh yeah, but this one, yeah, I know it sounds really interesting, because it's your brain that's coming up with this stuff, right? So it's like your brain versus your brain. It's like, well, that's just going to be a draw. That's like it's going to go on forever, right? So for me, it's been really helpful to understand, like, again, yeah, I'm just thinking about whatever it is, the future, or some fear, or some, second guessing, or yada yada. And it's like, have I been sitting here for 5 minutes doing nothing but this? Oh, that's overthinking. All right, what are we doing? Back to the list. So another tool I use is just making lists, like get it out of my head, put it on a piece of paper. And for me, it might be my age, but I do like writing things down. I mean, people have been writing things down either on walls or on paper, for thousands of years. So I think there's something about that, putting that like pen or pencil to paper and writing it down and then looking at it. There's like I think you can type lies easier than you can write them. You know what I mean? Like if you're just writing by hand and something's coming out, and if it's BS, it's like, your hand doesn't want to write. You're like, this is not true, or this is not the truth for me. So that's another process that I use, and I like making lists and then looking back on the day and I tell people, look, I might write it in like black. I have I love these pens, the G2. This isn't a commercial, but my G2, my Pilot G2, it's like a gel pen. Right, so good. So I love writing my list with that, but then I'll get like a red marker or a pink highlighter to cross stuff off. So it's like bang, when you cross that thing off, it's like a big event. And then I look at that paper at the end of the day and go, look at all those things that got crossed off. And then anything that didn't, we carry it on to tomorrow. And sometimes too, I'll get to the end of like a week and go, I'm not doing that thing. It's like, do I really need to do this thing? I mean, if it's pay your taxes, yeah, but like sometimes it's just like, you know what? The inspiration's gone. I'll just let that thing go. So that's another part of it too. Like sometimes you just like let it go, forget it. We don't because that's the perfectionism thing, which is another thing.
Yes, no, you make a lot of good points there. I'm guilty of a lot of that, but creating the list is interesting because it reminds me. Many years ago, I was a lieutenant colonel, and we were sitting around with a general who was getting ready to retire, and he said, "I'm going to leave you with one thing, but it's actually three things." He said, "I want all of you." He said, "By the time you get back to New York, because we were on a trip," he said, "think of what you want to do in the next year. Then think about what you want to do in the next 3 years, and then think about what you want to do in the next 5 years." And he goes, "And I don't want you to tell anyone." He goes, "This is for you." And I really struggled with the 5 year thing because I thought, geez, I'm not going to get promoted to full bird colonel. I just thought it wasn't going to happen. It was the higher you go, the smaller the window and all of these things. And I said, well, I'm going to put it there in case it does happen. And when it happened, I sent him a message and I said, "Do you remember the day that you told us the three things?" I said, "That was my 5 year plan." And it happened. And he was like, "Oh my gosh," like he was really excited because he knew that I was like very doubtful. There's certain things that are very competitive, like in your world. And I thought that was so interesting because he said, "You don't have to write it down, but you're writing it down in your head." He said, because you can always go and find it there, because he didn't want us to tell anyone. So I was like, wow, as you're talking, I'm like, this is incredible. Like you should have your own TV show, Matt. I swear you should. But there's another thing that you had talked about briefly, and I want to circle back around to it. And I think a lot of people struggle. I have my own personal company, Dream Central Station. A lot of my friends have companies. It's sometimes difficult to really set your value. And I think you speak about this a lot in your coaching about what is your worth. You could look at other people and you could say, they're charging this or this is their rate. What should my rate be? You really have to be realistic with that. But at the same time, you also cannot fall short of what your talents are or what your quality is. So can you speak more about that? Because a lot of people struggle with that, especially when the economy is not very steady for a lot of people and you may have clients or you may be charging something. So I think that would be really helpful for the audience.
Yeah, I mean, money's a big issue, right? And like historically, it's a big issue. And, you know, it's been considered not polite to talk about money. Certain religions had an interest in making people think if they didn't have money, they were clean and pure. So why don't you give it all to us and we'll take care of it? And so, like, that's a whole other thing. But like, this is deep, deep, deep in our DNA, you know? And there are certain cultures that are comfortable talking about money. Oh, and guess what? They tend to be more successful and have more money. Wow, imagine that. So why don't we like loosen up a little bit and talk about money? So I think if someone's feeling uncomfortable about it, that's natural. And also, if someone is an employee, I haven't had a proper job, since I was 20, but like if you're an employee, from what I remember, you talk about money when you get hired, and then that company might even have raises built in, which I hate. Don't tell me when I'm going to get a raise. I'll do a good job and then tell you I want a raise, and then we can take it from there. But so you don't have to talk about money. But if you're an entrepreneur or you're a hired gun or a independent contractor, hopefully you're talking about money every day. And people are asked, hey, what would you charge me for this? Hey, if I do this now, okay, but what if I do this, but I'm going to give you 3 more jobs on top of that? So can we work out a thing? Like hopefully you're talking about money all the time. So if people aren't comfortable with that, it's a huge issue. And regarding musicians specifically, a professional means you get paid for, right? And I've said this before, like I make breakfast for my kids. They tell me it's the best breakfast they've ever had. But there is a huge difference between me making breakfast for my kids and me owning and running a restaurant. And that's the same difference between the guy sitting on his couch playing Eruption while he's watching the Jerry Springer show versus having a career as a guitarist, right? And there's a lot of little pieces in there, et cetera, but the money is the difference. The money is the difference. And so we've got to get comfortable talking about that. And one of the things that I've come across a lot with cats that are struggling is they kind of go from the bottom up, and they have, again, this employee mentality, which is like, well, I just want to get the experience, or, this is, I'm new to this, so I'm just working I'm like, no, forget all that. If your thoughts are leading you to charge less, let's get rid of those. Like, why don't you make a Mercedes rather than a go-kart? Like, let's go from the top down and figure it out. So I have a few different processes for that, but it's really about figuring out what it is you want to make, and then how can you make that? And then, okay, well, then I need to charge this. Okay, how can you provide more than that in value to somebody? Right. So you're coming from the top down rather than from the bottom up. And I'll work my way up. And my goal, it's like, man, there's someone doing exactly what you're doing right now, making twice as much money with half the talent. So you want to do your corporate ladder thing? Or do you want to just like unplug from all that and talk to the universe and listen to your heart? And I love the story you told about, talking with the general, because it's like you said, you put something in your mind and your mind will push back. You're just making stuff up, like, oh, in 1 year I want to be this, in 3 years, and then in 5 I want to be this. And then your brain is going, no, we can't. And you said, small window at the top, all the little limiting thoughts come in, and you can feel the pushback just from your own brain. And so again, money's the same way. It's like you start thinking about certain numbers, and certain numbers will not feel good, and then bigger numbers will feel exciting, and then even bigger numbers will feel nervous and like, oh my God, like that's the number when it's a nervous number. But this is just all in our heads, it's just all in our heads. So again, like money, huge issue. Most people in most businesses don't have to talk about it very often, but we've got to get comfortable with it. We've got to get comfortable with it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being so detailed with it. It is something that I think, and it's individual. I've had a lot of conversations, even in my business. I'm a professional psychic medium. I have a lot of conversations with other psychic mediums, but sometimes we get into the conversation of like, well, my dad grew up, he was a World War II guy. So he was always like saving and not spending. And I'm like, wait a minute, in our world, you have to advertise, our world, we have to spend money to make money. So that's a big piece of it, and I think back to, the way I grew up, my dad was like, you don't need to buy that. You don't need to spend your money on that. You have to almost separate from how you were trained or how you grew up, because their experience is not your experience. And sometimes as you develop your own life, you have to step away from, I had to really consciously step away from my dad's voice in my head saying, you don't really need to do that, do you? So do you know what I mean by that?
Completely. Yeah. What I always tell people is like, when there's that voice, oh, you don't need that, or this isn't going to work, or you have to be responsible, or whatever the voice, I go, let's listen to that voice. Whose voice is that? It's not yours. It's not yours. And if you keep listening, I mean, you already knew that was your dad's, but like, if you keep listening, you track it down. It's like, oh, that's my mom, or that's my teacher, or that's my first girlfriend, or like whatever. But it's like some tape from the past and you just believed it, or, you needed to actually do it at the time because of whatever. And so then, like, does it serve us? Cool, keep it. If it doesn't, let's get rid of it. And it is that simple. It's not always that easy, right? But yeah, there's all those tapes playing. And when you start kind of uncovering those things, you realize, how we were programmed, not intentionally. Just, I see my kids are 8 and 10. They hear a song once, they remember all the lyrics. I'm like, God, their brains are so empty. Like they just don't have, they don't have all, they don't even have their social security number in there. They don't have like 10 phone numbers and 10 addresses and all the people they ever met. And it's like there's just like this blank slate. So as a kid, you just soak stuff up. We hear things and we believe pretty much everything. I mean, we believed in Santa, right? I mean, that was ridiculous. And we believed that one, right? So like we believe everything else. And so like as we get older, again, we just have to look at, like, does it serve us? Cool. And if it doesn't, we can let it go. And without any judgment too. It's like, I don't know what year your dad was born, but like World War II, I mean, the depression preceded that. So it's like certainly his parents were coming from that, whether or not he went through that, I don't know his age, but like, yeah. And so that's why he said that. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Makes complete sense. And he was just trying to teach you, the right thing so you would have a good life. And he did the best he could. Okay, cool. Now, does this work for me? Yes or no? And if it doesn't, like, let's just let it go.
Yes. Well, you make a lot of good points. And one thing I have to say, which you also had mentioned, is when you start developing in your career, at least in my career, I went over to England and I got, tested twice. And I got certified here by the Forever Family Foundation. And in the Forever Family Foundation, they've only certified 28 mediums. So
Mm.
those things are saying, I have been validated. So they also, when you're validated, like when you look at your bio and said, well, I played with this one, I played with that one, you automatically say there's talent there, so that when you say, you worry about things and you say, you have to let some of that go because you've actually been validated by a population of expertise in that field that say you have that talent. So when you try to, figure out what you need to let go of, sometimes you need to let go of that. We hold that feeling of like, I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy enough or whatever those things are. You have to say, I've been put to the test and I passed it.
Completely. But the overthinking brain is completely nuts. It has no barriers and it'll just say anything. So like what you just said, like I got certified. There's been 28 people. I'm one of 28 mediums in the world ever. And then your brain would go, yeah, but they, like were you at the bottom of the class or were you at the top of the class? Or like maybe they missed something or they probably just thought you were nice and they just wanted now if you did it again, you might like it'll just go bonk, just like it'll say anything. So yes, that is good evidence. And I do tell people like when we talk about self-esteem, because I hear like people say, well, if I had more self-esteem, I would die. I go, no, you wouldn't. That's just a ruse. I said, if you heard what was in my head, some days you'd think this guy has no self-esteem. I just don't listen to it. Right. It's just chatter. And the best thing we can do is do. And then once I do it, to your point, to circle back, it's like I said, for most of our stuff in the music business, if you can Google it, it happened, right? So that's what I said, like of my early bands, like, we had all these things that were like cool accomplishments, but you couldn't Google them. They weren't facts, right? It wasn't like played with Ace Frehley from 2012 to whatever, or toured with Mr. Big, made this record. Here it is. I have a copy of it in my hand. So I think the best way to kind of overcome those voices is definitely by achieving. But again, that voice will go, yeah, I know, but then what did you do last week? So it's always gonna like try and one up you for sure.
Wow. What's one of your best experiences in coaching? Do you have success stories or what has been highlights for you?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like a simple one, and I've had this happen on several occasions, working with a guy, we start working together, and then like after the third or fourth session, they'll tell me, my wife said to me this week, like, I don't know what you're doing with Matt, but like keep doing it. And so like it's changing who they are. Like we're talking music and career stuff, and it's changing the kind of person they are, like how they're showing up in the world, which is huge, you know. But like to speak to specific coaching things like with music, yeah, I have a client, Tom, who's 20, lives in Australia. So for all the people that think, well, I mean, my location is the problem. Okay, he lives in Australia, dude. So and to see him go from he was a tennis instructor full time when I met him, also playing music, but like not making any money from it. And then to watch him like, okay, how much you make this month? And like, I made 1,000 this month. And then like, next month, two. Okay, now three. And it keeps on going. And then like he had his first tour. He said, like, I said, what about your, because he goes, I want to, go to America, but I don't really know like how that's gonna happen. I go, do you have your passport? He goes, yeah, but it needs to be updated. I go, get that updated. And I said, even though you don't have anything, just you got to be ready. Like tell the universe you're ready. And then within like a month, he got a tour to go to New Zealand, and he did his first like out international tour. And then on this other thing, they were actually going to Europe, Canada, Africa, which I've never been to Africa. And then he had a choice because he's like, well, I got these gigs in Australia. And so he opted to do the New Zealand thing. And then he's going to do another run later this year. But he had choices, to see somebody like have these things come to fruition, and then like not only go from not having many gigs to having a bunch of gigs, but then have choices and go, well, I prefer this. And then Africa sounds cool, but it was like 6 weeks. And he's like, it's a bit much. I'm going to opt not to. So like to see this guy have choices, and now he's like transitioned out of his full-time job. He got to part-time. And then at one point his boss goes, listen, mate, he's like, you're great. But he goes, you're clearly not. You keep calling in, and getting a sub. So he's like, maybe I'll just have you on the call list in case I need you. And he's like, yeah, cool. So he like transitioned out of that job. So he's full-time musician, touring, recording, playing, and making a living playing music. And again, dude's 20.
That's a wonderful story. When you're telling that story, it almost reminds me of like your coaching in some way is helping them set the intention for their life. And like what you said about the man that you're coaching and his wife is commenting, you're actually helping his family. So you're not just helping him, but you're helping the relationships in his family. Because when people are under stress, that's got to leak out into their family. So you're doing like a double service with this coaching.
Yeah, I mean, I say, I'm just here to help, but like they're doing all the work. You know what I mean? So, but thank you, yeah, for saying that. I mean, it's definitely like it's really a profound experience, you know. And I had to figure out different language. Like I use the word next level because no matter where someone is, next level means next level to them. Because I would use the phrase like live your dreams, but that just kind of sounds like nonsense, even though it's completely not. But like, well, I'm gonna help you live your dreams. It's like, oh, okay, you magic, you a genie. Like, come on, man. Let's talk real. Like, okay, real, I'll help you get to the next level. Does that feel more like, legit? Okay, cool. But really, like, we're talking about living our dreams, you know? And whether it's a goal or a dream, a goal's just a dream's just a really big goal that's super exciting. You might have a goal to like, okay, I'm going to pay all my taxes on time. Yeah, it's probably not a dream, but it's like a goal, right? You go, yeah, cool. But the dream might be like, and then we're going to go on vacation in Hawaii. And like, that's a dream, you know? And so to help people achieve these things is way beyond helping people get gigs and all of that, which is awesome too. But just to see their lives grow and see them grow as people is a really rewarding experience.
I love your statement next level because I've watched several of your videos, and very often in the conversation of next level, you bring it out and away from music. You say, well, it could be a next level relationship, and it could be a next level job, and it could be a next level, and it's true. There's so many times, that you look at things and say, well, it's okay, but what could be better? And that's what brings you to that next level. So I love that.
Yeah, and another gift of doing this kind of work too is like in order for me to say the words, they have to come out of my brain and like resonate through my body. So I'm like listening, going, yeah, this is good advice, dude. Maybe you should try this too. Maybe you could use a little bit of this too. So it keeps me in check, because I'm talking with people and they're being so gracious, as to share their intimate, situations and feelings and secrets and whatever. So we can talk about these things, but then as I'm saying all these things, I'm hearing what I'm saying, and it's like, yeah, that's a good lesson right there. So I'm gonna, try some of that myself.
Well, I know you're a family man, so do you see any of your family joining music, your children, or do you see them becoming musicians in the future, or is that not going to be their path?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, my daughter's 8. She says she wants to be a singer. So I'm like, okay, cool. That could be cool. And my son plays drums. Got a band called War Against Mars. They know Seven Nation Army. That's one song they know. They don't know any other songs. Uh, but yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, I just want them to be as excited about whatever they're doing as I am about music. And at 10 and 8, they don't need to decide that or figure that out. They may not have even found it yet, But that's just my only wish for them, is just to find something as exciting to them as music is to me.
Yeah, well, you're a great resource for them, especially with the drums. Seven Nation, let me tell you, that is a drumming song, as you know. So they picked a good one, right?
It's
Wow.
a good one. Yeah, it's a great tune. It's a
Uh,
great tune. Yeah, I mean, look, if they want to play music for real and they're like, okay, I'm like full in, it's like, all right, let's listen to some Led Zeppelin. Let me turn you on to some cool stuff. You know what I mean? So I'm like, if they really want to go down that route, cool. But I truly would just be happy if they were living their passion, whatever that is.
Yeah, that's great. So, can you tell everyone how they can find you on social media or on any of your other platforms?
Sure, yeah. So all my music stuff is Matt Starr Music, and Star is 2 R's. So it's mattstarmusic.com is my site. My Facebook is facebook.com/Matt Starr Music, Instagram Matt Starr Music. And then the coaching stuff, I use my social media for both, but there is a site, Matt Starr Coaching. So it's all pretty straightforward. You're like, oh, what's that Matt Starr Coaching? What is that? Just put a .com at the end and then go to Matt Starr Coaching and you'll find it.
Well, I love the Instagram. I actually catch that every day. So I really appreciate you being on Instagram. We're going to end our interview, and I hate to end it because I've been enjoying your conversations and your experiences. It's been really great. But I know that you selected one of your songs, The Greatest Thing. Can you tell me more about that song?
Yeah, sure. So I wrote that in 2000. I recorded it on a 4-track, if you know what that is, very ancient technology. And I recorded then, and then I wrote a little more in 2010. And I played drums on it and produced it. And then my friend Jorgen Carlson, who was in Government Mule for many years, he played bass on it. And T-Bone Anderson did like these crazy keyboard sounds. There's a lot of weird sounds. There's no electric guitar in there. It's just all keyboards and drums and bass. And yeah, that lyric kind of seemed a little over the top when I wrote it, and the song's pretty, I thought, dramatic. And then as time has gone by over the last 20 years, unfortunately, it's like becomes more and more timely. So yeah, this song's kind of like haunted me because I've never really released it properly, but every time I hear it, there's something about it.
Well, I love it. So we're going to roll out now with The Greatest Thing. Thank you again, Matt Starr. It has been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Awesome talking with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
This world is so cold, and people are crazy, killing their lovers, killing their babies. The greatest thing I can do is fall in love with you. Buildings are burning, tumbling down, bodies are everywhere. I don't wanna die alone. Sparkle and fade. The greatest thing I can do is fall in love with you. The greatest thing I can do is fall in love with you. The greatest thing I can do is fall in love with you. The greatest thing I can do is fall in love with you. Take your time, I will wait. If you're lost or hesitate, no one's looking, there's no shame. No more judgment, no more blame. There's nothing you have lost that can't be replaced. There's nowhere left to run, just remain here in grace. Take my strength when you're down. If you're lost, that's where it's found. All I'm saying is it's alright. Don't fear the dark, go to the light. There's nothing